Hello YouTube! I feel like it's been forever and a day since we talked because I took a week off of YouTube, I took a week off of filming and editing because this week was the last week that I was studying for my personal training certification. Spoiler alert, you saw in the title, I passed. Yay. So I'm making a little video because I watched a ton of these when I was studying, and so I wanted to make one about just some studying tips and like what I did to pass, and yeah, just some tips and tricks that I learned along the way. So the main things that I want to touch on are exactly what I did and then talk about what I liked and what I didn't like, and then I have a couple of tips at the end that I think would just help everybody out. So I'm looking at my notes right here. I just had to like write everything down because I can never just improv. I'll leave something out, you know? For every single chapter, this is exactly what I did. I did the same thing every single time. I would open up the chapter or the module. They're modules, not chapters. I would open it up, I would read the full reading, and yes, I read almost every chapter. I did not read the last two, just being honest. I did not read the last two chapters because they were about like customer service and building a business, and honestly, if you've ever worked in customer service before, it was just like, be a good human. So I skipped those, but for every other chapter, this is exactly what I did. I read the whole thing, and while I was reading it, I was actually taking notes. I got a notebook and filled it up with a whole lot of stuff. And I'm type A, so it's all color coordinated, but you don't have to be that extreme. I took notes as I was reading, and then I went back and I would read the review and kind of loosely compare it to my notes. And then I immediately watched the video because there's videos attached to all of them. I didn't figure this out because I'm an idiot maybe, but I didn't figure this out until like a couple videos in, that some of them have like multiple videos that you have to watch, and up at the top you'll see that there's options for that. So I would watch the video and then I would actually go and Google search like module 1 NASM, what is this? I think it's version 6 or whatever. And then I would look at it on Quizlet and I would take it because it would have like a ton of questions in there. I assume that the people who made those, the Quizlets, had like a more advanced, not advanced, but paid for like the bigger package from NASM. I did the very, very basic self-study. It's like the cheapest one you can possibly get. Anyway, so then I would take the quiz on Quizlet, and then I would go back and I would take the quiz in like the NASM quiz that they provide for you. And I would just take it until I passed it, just to make sure, you know, that I was okay. But I wasn't really at that point concerned about getting like a 100% on each quiz. It was just you need a 70 to pass. Yeah, and then just like a note on Quizlet is that I did that for most of the chapters, and honestly I didn't find it that helpful looking back at it. I think that that was kind of a waste of time. It might be nice like if you have the time, but if you're trying to do this in a crunch, I would just skip the Quizlet thing. It really didn't help me that much. I think it might be helpful for specific chapters, like if you're really, really struggling with with like creating programs, then maybe you could go find a Quizlet just focused on that, and that might help. But for doing it for every chapter, I found that to just be a little excessive. Okay, so then the things that I used beyond what NASM provided for me was I watched a ton of YouTube videos. I highly, highly suggest those, and I'll link a couple of the ones that I liked below. One of the ones that I really enjoyed was I watched a few of them on the overhead squat assessment, because the ones that I had watched on how to pass the NASM all talked about the importance of the overhead squat assessment, which I totally agree with. It's not just the overhead squat, but like all of those assessments, they ask a lot of questions about the overactive and underactive muscles. At least for me, the way that the exam works is that they have, I think, like 800 questions in their pool, and then you're just given 100 of them and then 20 research questions. So for me personally, my test asked a lot of questions about overactive and underactive muscles, and I've heard a few other people say that, so I think that that's just, NASM has a lot of those in their pool. But I did watch a specific video on the overhead squat assessment, and that kind of made things more clear to me, so I will link that below. Another thing that I used that I really liked was I was having a really hard time memorizing all the muscles. I did not go to school for anything in the fitness industry, and so I was very new to this, and so I had a really hard time memorizing the muscles. And then I found this game online where it like tells you what muscle and you click on it, and it's super fun, and I'll link it below if you guys want to play. But that's how I learned all the muscles, or most of them. It doesn't have everything on there that NASM asks about, but I feel like in that game, and I learned all of them in like one night, like it probably took like an hour for me to really memorize all of it. Then after that, I could kind of figure out the few that they left out. So I will link that website below. And then the other thing that really helped me, I'm gonna pull it up on my phone. NASM CPT Pocket Prep app. I heard a few people talking about that, so I was like, oh, what's up with this app? So I went and I searched it. It does cost money. I think it's like $34, which feels a little steep, but it's 100% worth it, and it helped me a lot. The wording is very similar to NASM. Even though it was a different program, it was still like very in line with how everything is worded and phrased, and I think just overall helped me study. So it has like 800 questions, so I just tried to like complete the whole thing by the time my exam was, which was today. And I just would do that like in the morning, like instead of scrolling through Instagram, I would just, you know, click on some of the questions and try to answer things. Yeah, so instead of scrolling through Instagram, this is just what I would do like in the morning and evening. You'll see here that it says that I've only answered 120 questions, and that's because I went back and reset the whole thing so that it wouldn't be like only ask me questions that I hadn't gotten before. So I went, and after I answered all 800, I reset my progress, and I had this whole plan to like complete this whole thing a second time through, and it just didn't really work out that way, and that's okay. But see, you can either do like a quick 10 question exam, and it's timed, so you can see there at the bottom. They give you a question of the day, or you can create your own exam, and this is what I would do, is I would show me answers at the end, do all of that, and then I would actually bring that up to 100. And yeah, and then you can like flag the questions as you go if you want. If you flag the questions as you go, then like you can flag all the ones that you don't know and then only be tested on those, so that's helpful. After I went through all of the chapters, I went back and I printed off the study guide. I went ahead and I took all the domain quizzes that they have, and then I went, and they have podcasts in there that you can listen to, and some of them were helpful and some of them weren't. I did not listen to all of them. I only listened to the ones on the domains that I like didn't do well on the quiz for, or like ones that I thought were harder, ones that took up more of the exam. It tells you like what percentage each domain takes up in the exam. So like I listened to the one on like assessments and like program design. Yeah, so I just listened to the ones that like I felt like I needed to pay more attention to, but I did not listen to all of them. I'm just gonna put a real bit out there. So the week of the exam, over this past week, the past few days, what I've been doing, I started off the week by taking that knowledge check quiz that they give you, and so it's 100 questions. It's just checking your knowledge. They don't call it like an exam. It's not a quiz. It's just 100 questions, and then it tells you what percent you got out of it. So I ended up getting a 71, and I was like, oh, that makes me a little nervous, you know, because you need a 70 to pass. And I was like, we're gonna have to get a little bit higher than that. So then I went back to the beginning, started at module 1, and I went through all of the quizzes, and I took all of them all week long until I got a 100% twice in a row. So like module 1, let's just say for example, I got a 70, and then the next time I got a 90, and then the next time I got 100, and then the next time I got an 80. I would keep going until I could get 2 100s in a row. And they rotate through the questions. Some of them literally ask the same 10 questions every single time, and then there's others where like they must have like 50, 60 questions in there because you don't get asked the same ones that often. And the ones with more questions are honestly like the more important part of the test, meaning that they take more time, like the program design and the assessments definitely have more questions in that pool. Yeah, so I would take all of those until I could get a 100% twice in a row. And also during the week, I just went through the study guide. So this is when I printed the study guide out. Yeah, and then I would just go through and like highlight things that maybe I wasn't quite understanding or needed a refresher on, or like words that were similar. Like I could remember, this is one. So like stroke volume, I just highlighted volume and amount, because in a multiple choice question, that's what's gonna help me figure it out, is like remembering that a volume is an amount. Yeah, so that's just what I did. I didn't like go through and highlight the whole thing. I didn't really tear this apart, but I'll talk about what I wish I would have done with this study guide in a few minutes. So at the end of all of that, there's a practice exam, and that practice exam actually has multiple questions. I tried to take the knowledge checkpoint quiz multiple times, but it literally asks the exact same question every single time. Like the 100 questions are always those 100 questions. The practice exam at the end, I guess, has like a pool of questions, and it chooses 120 from them. So if you're gonna take something multiple times, take the practice exam, not the knowledge checkpoint one, so that you get different questions every time. So I went ahead and took that practice exam 3 nights in a row and got progressively better with each one, which is good. So that's literally exactly what I did for the past, I think I've been studying for like a month, and then I took it today. I was supposed to take this last week, and I rescheduled because I was like, there's just simply no way. So these are the things that I wish I did differently, which I think would have made my process a little bit simpler. And I hope that, you know, if you guys are studying, then maybe you can take these and it'll just make everything a little bit easier. So the big thing that I wish I did was that I wish I had printed out this study guide first thing. As soon as I got it, I wish I had printed out the study guide and actually used the study guide along, like while I was learning all of it, because the study guide highlights certain things that you really, really need to know. It lays it out in a super simple way, and it puts things next to each other. What I mean by that is, like, I had a really hard time remembering the difference between like reciprocal inhibition, yeah, here it is, autogenic inhibition, reciprocal inhibition, and altered reciprocal inhibition. And this actually puts all of them like next to each other so you can see everything very simply laid out. I'm a very visual learner, so I found this to be extremely helpful. So then the other part that I found, and I said this before, that I found kind of difficult was learning the overactive and underactive muscles, but it actually lays out, I don't know if you can see it. Okay, like the feet are turned out. These are the overactive muscles, these are the underactive muscles. So it literally lays everything out right in front of you. They do the overactive and underactive muscles, and then they do all of the program designs right here. And I wish I had seen that. I just wish that I had printed these out, because I was just trying to memorize everything, and then I had the idea of maybe like making charts that literally would have looked exactly like this, and instead of that I just could have simply looked at the dang study guide. That's the big thing that I would have done differently, is I definitely would have printed this out first thing and studied along with it. And then the other big tip, and this is gonna sound kind of dumb, but the big thing is that I wish that I had actually taken the time to understand concepts as soon as they were introduced. Like, for example, the muscles is like, they talked about all the muscles, and then I kind of let a few modules go by without me fully memorizing all of the muscles. And I wish that I had taken the time to actually learn all of that before I moved on, just because then I feel like I was backtracking and I had to like relearn everything, and it just made things more confusing in my mind. I just work at like a very fast pace, and sometimes if I didn't understand things the first time, I'd be like, okay, well that's okay, I'll just like mark it and I'll go back and learn it later, or I'll write it down in my notes and I'll go back and learn it later. But like, you never go back and learn it later. So then on a couple of things I was kind of screwed and like took a step back and had to like learn all the muscles, and then I could go forward and stuff like that. I also ran into that problem with the overactive and underactive muscles, but if I had just printed out my freaking study guide, we wouldn't have had that problem. When you break everything down, it all makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's muscles, it's very basic science. There's nothing, they're not trying to trick you, like there's nothing that difficult about it. For example, with the overactive and underactive muscles, the lower back arching, the abs are lengthened, because if the abs were strengthened, then everything would go underneath and would align properly. So it's just thinking about things in a very practical way and actually breaking it down in your head. When I started doing that, I understood the concepts a lot more, and everything was becoming a little bit clearer. And then you can actually use it in a functional way, like when it asks a question of your client is blah 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 blah. That's how all the questions are phrased too, is they're very what is the word I'm looking for? What is that word? The questions are all, I can't think of the freaking word, but all of the questions are like situational questions. Not all of them, but most of the questions are like situational questions. Like, your client asks you this, your client does this, their knees would do this, their head does this, you know, and so then what do you think? Blah 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 blah. That's how a lot of the questions are phrased. So actually learning it makes the exam a lot easier. All right, guys. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I am back on YouTube. Had to take a little break, but I am back. So if you guys enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, click that subscribe button, stick around. And if you guys are studying for your NASM exam, I almost did break a leg. I went to school for theater. If you're studying for your NASM exam, good luck. You guys are gonna do great. Yeah, just study and really understand the concepts. You guys are gonna absolutely kill it. Oh, another resource that was really good was, I had a couple of questions and I emailed the student email that they have. I don't remember the email, but I'll look it up. I'll put it on the screen, or I'll link it below. And emailing them, they're super, super friendly. So that's also a great resource. Thank you so much for watching, and never forget to love the life you lived. I will see you guys in my next video.